Welcome to another episode of the Pro Overwatch News Recap. There's a whole bunch of Overwatch League offseason news and 2020 season details to go over and give my takes on, so we are going to dive straight into this episode. But before I get started, I just wanted to let you guys know that I will be making a few videos on the 2019 World Cup, so don't worry. I promise you there will be some content regarding that coming very soon. Anyway though, let's talk about free agency first because we have some crazy stuff that's gone down over the last week or so. I wanted to begin with what I think is the most significant roster news of the week. So if you weren't already aware, the Philadelphia Fusion recently announced their roster for 2020, and I have to say that for the most part, it's looking pretty insane. So in this epic reveal video back on October 30th, the Fusion revealed that their team would consist of Sato, Poco, Fury, Carpe, Ivy, EQO, Funny Astro, Boombox, and Alarm. Now, let's talk about the tank line first. So seeing Sato and Poco still be here is no shocker since they were both under contract, but how about this Fury pickup? I heard rumors that he might go to the Fusion, but I thought another team like the NYXL, for an example, might swoop in and take him instead. It's just crazy to believe that even though they already had Poco, the Fusion somehow found a way to improve their off-tank position by getting, in my opinion, a top 3 off-tank in the league. So this is absolutely massive, obviously. I'm sure Fury is going to have to work on his English a little bit, but nonetheless, it's still a great pickup for the Fusion. But that begs the question, will they think about trading Poco? I have no idea personally. I think that a team would definitely be willing to trade for him, but honestly, they might want to keep him. With all of the traveling and room for potential burnout this season, we may see Fury get some games off here and there where Poco fills in for him. And since they were able to sign Fury, you have to assume that was a big reason why Carpe decided to stay in the end. If you didn't already know, Carpe is really good friends with both Fury and Jonek. Those three are in a very close relationship with one another, so I honestly think Carpe wanted to sign in a place where he could be with at least one of them. So I'm sure the moment the Fusion told him they traded for Fury, he instantly wanted to sign some sort of contract extension. Getting Fury came with a pretty heavy price though. The Fusion were forced to trade the main support player Bernard and the off-tank player Fuse from Fusion University to the London Spitfire, and I'm also assuming there was a good amount of compensation they had to pay with actual money. But all in all, this was worth it for the Fusion. Yeah, they could have promoted both of these contenders players to their roster instead, but with the addition of Funny Astro and the option to get Fury, this was the right move if you ask me. I'm sure London fans are a little sad to see yet another one of their star players go, but this trade honestly isn't as bad as some people might think. These new pickups honestly aren't bad at all, and from what I've seen and heard, both of them are actually pretty solid. London clearly wanted to build a budget roster for 2020, and I bet that both Bernard and Fuse don't have massive contracts. All in all, I think this move works out for both teams. Back to the Fusion roster though. I mentioned how they got Carpe back already, which is amazing, but they also surprisingly got EQO back. After they made that thank you post for him, I thought for sure he was gone. But it would seem that the Carpe EQO DPS line will be living on to see another day, and they'll be joined by the former Toronto Defiant DPS player Ivy, which looks to be a pretty decent pickup. Early on in Season 2, Ivy showed flashes of star-level potential. After Stage 1, though, he kind of started to slump and get less and less playtime as Toronto made changes to the team. But I really think he could make a turnaround on the Fusion if he gets groomed and coached correctly. Now, moving on to the supports, I think the Fusion really nailed it with their new pickups here. Promoting Alarm, who is arguably one of the top flex support players in the world, and acquiring Funny Astro from Atlanta is going to make for one hell of a support line. Both of these guys have been popping off in contenders, and I have no doubt that they could make a crazy strong duo. And if the Fusion feel like resting Alarm, they can always play Boombox, who has always been a pretty serviceable player for them since joining the Fusion back in 2018. Overall, this Fusion team is looking to be very strong on paper. Philly is without a doubt one of the biggest winners of the offseason right now. They made some nice upgrades to the roster, and they were able to re-sign both Carpe and EQO. The only glaring weakness I can really see with this roster is their main tank spot. In my opinion, and I know I'm not alone here, Sato is not a great player, so I'm really hoping the Fusion signs someone better down the line. But other than Sato, I can't really say this team has any glaring weaknesses. I'm sure the Fusion had to spend a ton of money to make this roster happen, but it definitely appears to be worth it. They have assembled a star-studded cast. The Fusion are looking to be more competitive and consistent than they were in either of the previous 2 seasons. One of the other big reveal videos we got has to do with the Valiant. So in a video involving Costa and Sideshow that was clearly made to poke fun at those leaks from a few weeks ago, it was revealed that the Valiant had finally announced some of their new additions to the team. This video mentioned nothing to do with Shax, KSF, or Custa, but I'm assuming they'll all be there to start the season. As for the new players though, starting with main tank, the Valiant signed a Korean player from Australian contenders who goes by the name of Dreamer. And the team he played for was the Sydney Drop Bears, so he played on one of the more popular teams from that region at least. It's pretty well known that Australian Contenders doesn't have that many solid players from the region, so I'm not quite sure how to feel about this pickup. I think he could be decent though, since it was mentioned in the video that he actually made it through open tryouts held by the Valiant. Moving on to their off-tank though, they decided to re-sign McGravy, which I honestly think is a good move. During the short time McGravy spent on the Florida Mayhem last year, he actually had some really decent showings, and he finally has a chance to shine on stage once again, and I think there's a chance he takes that next step up in his game. Then on DPS, they signed a very familiar name in Apply, who spent some time on Florida and their academy team last year like McGravy did, but he also recently had some Contenders experience playing for Revival. I personally have always thought Apply was a pretty okay player. He's not amazing, but I wouldn't say he's bad either. He's actually a pretty flexible player, and now he's reunited with his buddy McGravy, which is a good bonus. Then finally though, to cap it all off, the Valiant signed 2 support players in Slur and Lastro. So Slur hails from the United Kingdom and most recently played on Samsung Morning Stars and European Contenders. He can play anything from Zen and Moira to Mercy. Then there's Lastro, who's a South Korean player who most recently played in North American Contenders for Sky Foxes. It'll be interesting to see who ends up getting more stage time this year, as well as how well each of them mesh together with the rest of the team. And those are all the new pickups we know of as of this video. I'm also assuming Custa will still be on the team since no other main supports were signed yet and he's still under contract. We don't know for sure what'll happen with the likes of Custa, Shax, and KSF, but if I had to guess, I think there's a good chance all of them play for the Valiant in 2020. I'm sure they'll be posting some more roster updates soon enough though, so stay tuned. Moving on to the LA Gladiators now, they finally made the official announcement of OGE joining the squad. I gave my thoughts on him joining the team a while back, but let me once again say that I think him and Space have the potential to be a really solid tank line. But getting OGE came with a cost, as in return for OGE, they traded Decay over to the Dallas Fuel, which now leaves the Gladiators with a whopping 0 DPS players on their roster at the moment. Getting OGE and Space is really good for them, but I'm not quite sure what they plan to do with DPS. Also, can we just talk about how the Gladiators kind of just casted Decay aside, even though they won this huge bidding war for him last year? I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, they had to spend over 300k to get him, and yet they were done with him after just 1 year. Be on the lookout for some announcements regarding their DPS one of these days though. I get the feeling the Gladiators have some sort of plan up their sleeves. And before we move on from the Gladiators, they actually made one other move recently. It's not at the level of OGE in terms of excitement, but signing the strategic coach Curry Shot, who was part of the Guangzhou Charge late last year, is a good pickup. Curry Shot joined the Charge right before Stage 4 got underway, so you have to think that he at least made some sort of difference since the team had their best record in a stage after he joined. Could that just be a coincidence? Maybe, but regardless, I've heard nothing but good things about Curry Shot, so I personally believe that he's the real deal. Let's go back to the Dallas Fuel for a few moments though. So regarding this OGE trade, it was actually revealed by the Dallas Fuel's team owner that OGE had the final decision on where he got traded to. He also goes on to say that multiple teams were interested in him, which really doesn't come as much of a surprise. In terms of the Decay pickup, I would say this is a pretty good piece to get back in return for somebody like OGE. Decay is crazy high potential, and I don't even think he scratched the surface of what he's truly capable of during his time on the Gladiators. To be honest, he was actually kind of underwhelming in 2019. Don't get me wrong, he was pretty good, especially when he played Zarya, but it felt like he could have done more for somebody who got so much hype. Hopefully the Dallas coaching staff helps Decay realize all of that potential he has. I'm really hoping they don't waste his career. But that begs the question now, will the Dallas Fuel stick with all the DPS players they have, or are they going to trade or release one of them? They have Taimu, AKM, Zachary, and Decay as it currently stands. I think they realistically could keep all 4 of these guys, but you never know what's going to happen later down the line. Regardless of what they do though, getting Decay was a really good move. But that's not all of the Dallas Fuel news I have for you today. Yes, there's actually more. So one day after this trade announcement, they also came out and announced the re-signing of Note. So although Dallas can't do much this offseason since they have so many players under contract, they are making the few moves they make count. Note is a fantastic D.Va player. He's not the greatest on some of the other off-tank heroes in the game, but I have faith that he could improve. Note is a great guy with an open mind, and he has a good understanding of the game. I like the acquisitions made by Dallas so far, and if the rumors about them getting Guangzhou are true, then more pleasant announcements will be coming very soon. Moving on to the Boston Uprising now. On Monday during the Huck Q&A, they officially announced the signing of support player Myungbong and DPS player Jerry. The Myungbong pickup in particular is seen as very good. He played for O2 Blast during the last 2 seasons of Korean Contenders and was a participant in the Contender-specific showdown. He's shown the ability to be a difference maker on both the Zen and Ana. He's so good that some people will even argue he's the best flex support coming out of Contenders and that he's better than Alarm. I myself haven't watched enough of him to make that judgment, but what I can tell you is that Boston fans will probably be pleased when they watch him play on stage this year. As for the Jerry signing, well, I'm not quite sure how much potential he really has. What I can tell you about him though is that he played Hitscan for Meta Athena and X6 Gaming, and before that he used to be an off-tank player. And even if he's not a household name though, he most certainly has good experience under his belt as he played for 2 well-established Korean Contenders teams. Plus, if there's one team I trust when it comes to scouting, it's the Boston Uprising. They're so good at recognizing players with good potential. Overall though, I'm happy with these signings made by Boston. They filled the void at their flex support position with a solid player and got a needed second DPS player to pair up alongside Color Hex. But wait, I also have some rumors regarding the Boston Uprising that come from the very reliable Halo of Thoughts on Twitter. So according to him and his sources, the Uprising will soon be promoting Mufin and Swimmer from their academy team to their main roster. And what else can I say other than that these are some really good pickups? Both of these players have grown pretty popular, and I have to say that both of them are quite skilled. People have actually been wanting to see Swimmer in the Overwatch League for a while now. He's a skilled support player who can play a mean Lucio and Ana, and he's just been tearing it up on the ranked ladder. Then there's Mufin, who just exploded onto the scene after playing incredibly well in the Team Canada World Cup tryouts over the summer. He then quickly moved up to the Boston Uprising Contenders team, and now he seems to be moving up through the ranks once again. These signings will really help round out a potential starting roster for Boston, as they would now have a tank line of Fusions, Axiom, and Mufin, a support line of Swimmer and Myungbong, and a DPS duo that features Color Hex and Jerry. More Boston Uprising roster announcements should be coming soon though, as their total roster is only at 7 right now. Next up on the list now we have the Toronto Defiant. They've made quite a few moves over the last few days. They started by signing a new coach who goes by the name of Lilbo. Lilbo actually used to be a support player on Team Giganti for nearly a year. This is actually his first time being a coach, but I'm assuming he must be pretty good if Toronto wanted to give him a chance. In other news, Toronto finally made it official that they signed Agilities. We all knew this was coming because of the leaks from Sideshow on a stream, so no surprise there. With them letting Ivy go to Philly, they definitely needed another DPS player, and what better person to pick than a Canadian with tons of potential. Agilities may be young, but he has a lot of Overwatch League experience, and people don't realize he's actually won a lot throughout his pro career. He won a stage title in 2018, a Contenders title, and a couple of Premier tournaments. He's also a solid flex DPS who excels on projectile heroes. With Agilities joining the roster, that pushes the number of Canadian players on Toronto up to 2 since they picked up Megatrue's team option. This also means that the duo of Agilities and Kareev goes on to live for at least one more season. But guess what, Toronto fans? There's more. Along with Kareev and Agilities, you also got Beast Halo from Fusion University. Well, I guess I should say Beast now since he announced that he's going to be changing his name to that. A lot of people have been wanting to see this guy in the league for a while now, so I'm happy to see him finally take that next big step. And fun fact about Beast Halo, he was actually going to play for the Hunters along with Silkthread in 2019, but things fell through so he ended up having to go back to Fusion University. He's a pretty serviceable and likable main tank player, so I think this is a pretty good move made by Toronto. And from what I hear, Toronto originally actually wanted to trade for OGE, but the Gladiator swooped in and took him with the Decay offer. Anyway though, the final piece of Defiant news I have for you in today's video is the departure of Neko. Not much of a surprise here. With the acquisition of Kareev, that left Neko pretty expendable. Neko may be good, but Kareev is just at a different level. They could have maybe kept Neko as a backup, but they really didn't need him. That said, I really do hope that Neko finds a new team. I've always thought of Neko as a pretty good flex support player, and I think he is a really good Zen and Ana. He did well in Boston in 2018, and Toronto this year as well. There aren't a lot of teams who are in desperate need of a starting flex support, but I'm hoping somebody at least gives Neko a chance. He really deserves it. In other news, the Hangzhou Spark announced that 7 other team members from Season 2 will be staying with them for 2020. Gushue, Rhea, Godsby, Adora, Sasen, Bebe, and IDK are all confirmed to be sticking around. It's good to see their successful core staying together for another year. That Spark team was really good in their first year, so it would be a shame if they tore it down because it worked so well for them. It's not yet confirmed what's going to happen with the likes of Bazi, Revenge, and Nosmite, but last I checked, all of them are still with the Spark but are allowed to look for new opportunities. At the end of the day though, what matters the most is that the Spark brought back the main players that they used the most in 2019. Not for the Guangzhou charge. None of this will come as a shocker, but they officially signed the player options of both Nero and Eileen. Both of these players are absurdly talented talented, so of course they got re-signed. The Charge would be fools not to bring them back. These are two fantastic flex DPS prospects after all. Eileen looked incredible on the Doomfist and Sombra last year, and if you watched him in the World Cup this year, then you'll know that he can play a mean Reaper and Widowmaker as well. Then there's Nero, who wasn't eligible to play until the start of Stage 3 due to the league's age restrictions, but even in such a short amount of time where he was able to play on stage, this guy emerged as a true superstar. He showed us all that he is a world-class player who excels on all projectile heroes in the game. It felt like he was the big difference maker for the Charge this year. He was that true superstar X-Factor, if you will. While Nero was 17, the Charge had a 5-9 record. Pretty mediocre if you ask me. But when Nero is eligible to play in games, the Charge are 11-5 if you count playoff games. Very good decisions made by the Charge in this scenario. I think it would have been foolish to let either of these guys go. But there should be more announcements involving this team soon though. Happy and Shu have yet to officially get their team options accepted, and with Hoppa being a free agent, the Charge have a hole to fill at the off-tank position. Moving on though, now we have the Seoul Dynasty, who followed up from the chaos of signing Prophet and Gesture by making a few announcements. The big one is what at the moment appears to be their 2020 support line, which consists of Toby, who they re-signed, and Creative, who they promoted from their contenders team Gen G. With them getting a new flex support player, that tells me that the likelihood of Jaehong coming back has significantly decreased. There is still a chance he comes back, but I personally don't like the odds right now, to be honest. But hey, at least Toby is back. If Seoul lost both him and Jaehong, that would just be a shame. Plus, Toby has always been a pretty consistent player, especially when it comes to his Lucio. Creative is a bit more of an unknown factor for me since I don't know much about him, but Gen G was arguably the third best Korean contenders team, so you have to imagine he's pretty skilled. He'll have some big shoes to fill if Jaehong isn't coming back, so it's going to be interesting to see if the pressure gets to him or not. Along with these two signings, the Dynasty also promoted their assistant coach, I'm probably going to butcher this name, Chenggun, to the head coach role, and they brought up MMA, who was a coach on Gen G. So Chenggun has been a coach on this team for the last 2 years, I believe, so it's cool to see his hard work finally pay off with a big promotion. It's also really interesting that Seoul, for a second year in a row, has completely renovated their coaching staff. Right now, they only have 2 coaches, so expect some more signings in the future. Then finally, we wrap up the Seoul Dynasty news with them announcing the official release of Jexay and one of their coaches who goes by the name of Why Not. So by around mid-season last year, I honestly wasn't a big fan of what I was seeing from Jexay, so I really don't think this is a big loss for Seoul. Plus, Jexay announced a while back that he was looking for new opportunities, so maybe he already found a new team and that's why Seoul got rid of him. I hear that Jexay is a really good ult tracker, so that could prove to be a valuable asset if he finds a new team. Next up, we have the Atlanta Reign, who finally broke their silence by announcing that they re-signed Gator to a new contract and that they were promoting Hawk from their academy team to their main roster. It's good to see Gator back. I thought that he did really well to end the year on the Sigma for the Reign during the playoffs, and also he's just been killing it on the Atlanta Academy. I mean, he's just been improving over such a short amount of time. This is well deserved, and I'm expecting him to get more stage time this year. The Hawk promotion is a bit more intriguing though, just because while Hawk is good, the Reign already had 2 off-tank players on that roster, and there's no way they're going to have 3 off-tank players on their team heading into the year, so I'm assuming that Dako or FRD are likely on their way out. If I had to take a guess, I would say Dako is probably the most likely candidate to get the boot, just because he kind of stopped playing towards the end of the season in favor of FRD. They really liked what he brought to the table, and rightfully so. His Roadhog was fantastic, and he seemed to do really well with Pokebo on his side. So yeah, I think what we'll likely see happen is Dako go to a new team or just become a free agent. Then FRD and Hawk will become the off-tank players for Atlanta. The Reign could theoretically just roll with 2 tanks on their team and not have any others, but I think it's a good idea to have backups, as I mentioned before, just because there's a lot of traveling going on this year, and I think that fatigue and burnout is more likely to happen, so having other options is never a bad thing. Plus, having multiple tank lines means that there's going to be a lot of competition with practice and with scrims, and I think that's going to elevate the game of all of these players as a result. Okay, almost done, guys. The final piece of info I have to share with you regarding free agency is that the Washington Justice re-signed Arc. I'm sure multiple teams expressed interest in him because he's really good for one, but also he's bilingual, so good on the Justice for getting a new deal done with him. I personally have always really liked Arc because I think he's a great player and teammate, and I like his style of play. It's really cautious, but it leads to him very rarely feeding. I don't know the exact details of his contract, but the tweet makes me believe that this is just for 1 year as of right now. But even so, that's another hole filled for the Justice. All they need to do now is get a flex support, and we'll have an idea of what their projected starting lineup is looking like. So that's all of the free agency news I have for you in today's video, but before wrapping up, I wanted to share some details regarding the 2020 season that you may have missed since it was announced while the World Cup was on. So during the segment they held, they announced that the format of matches was going to change. Instead of playing the standard 4 maps plus a 5th one if necessary, every match will now be the first to 3 map wins. There will no longer be that boring 4th mandatory map that nobody wants to watch when one team has already won a series. If the game that's on is not evenly matched, then it'll end pretty fast with a quick and painless 3-0, and in the case of a match that's actually good, it could end up going on for quite a bit. It could just go the distance of that 5th map like it did during the old format, but it can also go on for much longer if there's any ties. We could potentially see like 6 or 7 maps in a series if that ends up being the case. There isn't a set number of maps that you play in this format. The teams will play as many as they need to until someone wins 3 times. I'm not sure how the rest of you feel about this change, but I welcome it with open arms. Sure, some games could end up going on for a long time because of this, but with there being less games per week now since we only get games on weekends, I think potentially having some longer games will help make up for not having as much action per week. Also, as I mentioned before, this is going to make those matches between a really good team and a really bad one go by a bit quicker. Another noteworthy thing to mention regarding the format is the map order is going to be changing continuously throughout the season. Control is always going to be the first map played in a set, but after that it's going to be totally random. One game you may see your team play on Hybrid for the second map, but then on the next game it could be either Escort or 2CP. The map pool is also apparently going to be expanded, which makes sense. There are no stages this year, which means that we can't have a set map pool for each stage. And again, I have to say that I'm a fan of these changes. Having more variety is never a bad thing. It helps keep things both fresh and interesting. The final thing they introduced during this segment was a mid-season tournament that'll be held at the same time as the All-Star break. Unfortunately, this tournament won't be featuring a lot of teams though, as only the leaders of the respective conferences plus the 2 teams with the next best records will be allowed to participate. I don't believe any details regarding rewards for winning this tournament have been released yet, but I imagine that the winning team will likely get a good amount of bonus cash. So when you think about it, in a way we still actually get some sort of playoff before the end of the year. It's pretty similar to the stage playoffs from 2018 actually, since only 4 teams are allowed to participate. I don't know if something like this is necessary, but it does mean we get some extra action and the opportunity to watch the best teams in the league go against each other. All of this information is pretty interesting though. Make sure to let me know what you think of these changes down in the comments section. And with that being said, that is going to conclude episode 5 of the Pro Overwatch News Recap. If you enjoyed this content, then I would appreciate it if you could like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're interested in further interacting with me, then consider following me on Twitter at ATP Overwatch and by joining my Discord server through the link in the description. And as always, thank you all so much for watching today's video. I really do appreciate all of you. And until next time, this is ATP signing out. Peace.